the Wiggly Podcast. Let your iPod bloom.
Welcome, dear listener, to Podcast 69, and today's the day we've been waiting for a long time. How long have you been trying to get this guest on the show, Richard?
I've been trying for as long as I can remember. I think the last time we talked about it originally was last Christmas, so Christmas before last now, because of course we're 2007, yeah, and then you and I were talking about trying to get Robin Page over here to give us all his knowledge and wisdom, and at last we've got him over.
Yeah, but you know, the problem is I'm a country bumpkin, and I didn't know what a podcast was or is, and so I didn't know what I was supposed to do. You know, it sounded to me as if I'd got to come and get beans out of we were going picking broad beans or something. I really am not up to speed with all this, so yeah. There are no beans here, a cup of tea, and to me this looks like a broadcast, a Wiggly Wigglers, and so
it's
podcast
really,
means nothing to me whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, we did.
But you know, this is all.
Phil tried to show you earlier on, didn't he, on the Headless Machine, what a podcast was.
Yeah, and so this is all an eye opener to me. And here we sit in your poor little hovel here, you know, managing as best we can in the cold.
Yeah.
And so it's really an eye opener, educational for me. And so this is my first ever podcast.
Excellent.
The Telegraph have threatened me with one, but I've avoided that so far.
I don't know how you dare mention the cold. I've put the heating on especially for you at 10 o'clock this morning.
Really?
And she didn't tell me either.
But, you know, the icicles by the window are not dripping. The blowfly is moving, so it must be warm. There is a blowfly.
Isn't that amazing?
That's right.
Yeah, at the 31st of January, and there's flies in the house. Anyway,
it's so warm, isn't it?
Well, I mean, is that an indication of the season or your cleanliness? I did see.
Fighting dog.
Yeah, I did see butterflies flying in Dorset in November. Really? I saw red admirals flying in Dorset, which I thought were amazing. And so the season is warmer, and obviously the inside of your house and the outside of your house is very appropriate for blowflies.
Climate change? Climate change?
I am a prophet of doom. I think the whole system has flipped. I won't be around to suffer it, but they've got big trouble.
Right, we've got loads of feedback to get through, and I suppose we have to apologise for last week's catastrophe, don't we, Rich?
Oh, yeah. It was a podcast that went slightly a bit wrong, didn't it? We were wired.
Got fretty, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We wound each other up a bit.
Yeah, but we love each other again now, and obviously we all still love Farmer Phil. But here we go. We've got a bit of feedback from Di Tiddy, who's proper poorly, so hope you get better soon, Di. And she says, the thing is, I'm supposed to be listening to your podcast to help me get better. You know, more relaxed, less anxious. And I came out of your catastrophe podcast feeling like I'd done 10 rounds with Amir Khan. So sorry about that. But she does say that there's a wonderful review at the Centre of Alternative Technology on the Wiggly book. And she scanned it in for me. And so if you want to see it, go to their catalogue. And she also says that she is from Cornwall, and when we had the pasty tasting session, she wants to tell us that the pasties are called Tiddy-yoggies. Tiddy-yoggy. And she says that they're named after her family, the Tiddies. Where are you from, Robin?
Cambridgeshire. We don't have pasties, but I love pasties.
Yeah.
And you had a pasty tasting.
We did. We got the Dutchy recipe book, and Ricky made these pasties.
They were really good. They were a tasty treat. That was when you and Phil were doing your
tour
of the
Can
US,
I tell you where my favourite pasties are?
You certainly can.
Turk's Head, St Agnes, Isle of Scilly. Oh, those pasties I'd kill for.
Really?
Turk's Head. Oh.
Did you eat the crust?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Even though I'm anorexic, I ate the crust. It's good.
OK, and we've got Rosemary Moon, who's the food writer, and she says that she's just listened to number 65, really good one. And we've also got a little bit of feedback from the lady who used to be in charge of the Cats Protection Group.
Oh dear, Rich.
Yeah, you can imagine what this says.
Who says, I have two suggestions. for Richard. 1. Heather sends you on a listening skills course. Or 2. Karen locks you in a car with a great big cat and let's see who wins the argument. Moving on.
No, can I come in on
Yes,
cat?
you can.
Because my vice chairman on the Countryside Restoration Trust is a farmer in Norfolk called Chris Knights, and he has a lot of ground nesting birds. One of them is a stone curlew, a very endangered bird, and so he has got trouble with things that eat birds that are on the ground. And one of those problems are cats and stray cats.
Yeah.
And suddenly his problem disappeared, as did all the cats.
How?
An eagle owl turned up in a little spinney, and the eagle owl has apparently eaten all the cats.
Good
So,
Lord. That's absolutely
I
fantastic.
think we've got to introduce, in areas where cats are a problem, eagle owls. And, we all love birds. We all love predator birds.
That's inspired.
And so,
Such a shame I can't buy you a pint after we finish this.
You are both bad men, and I am not going to let you drag me down to this row.
Don't you like eagle owls?
Come here, Noah. Puss, 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 puss.
I did get scratched. I've just come back from Kenya, and you'll see this wound here. If you look very carefully.
Massive.
And I went to the Nairobi Animal Orphanage, and they had an orphan leopard cub.
Oh, wow.
And what a little sweetie it was. But even at, I don't know how old he was, 6 weeks, 2 months, claws like razors and teeth like razors, goes on his back to play, and then like cats do, they shoot the back legs out. Your cats have got little claws. This thing has got 5 razors. There you go.
Yeah.
Don't want to meet his mother.
Definitely not. Did you see that tiger who's adopted those little piglets? I think that was in the Telegraph, and they put stripy jumpers on them.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Tonight he likes
That's quite a
pork.
worrying thing, really, because, having tried to foster calves or having had to foster calves on cows and they kick, the idea of fostering anything onto a tiger sounds like a very dangerous occupation to me.
Oh, and you know the
Probably
latest on farm fostering, don't you?
No?
You've got to foster calves with gay bulls.
Right. but not if you're a Roman Catholic.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we've got 2 gay ganders on our farm.
Have you?
Yeah. End of that conversation.
It wasn't going anywhere.
Moving on to a Swede. We have another hedge, Heather, and it says, yes, hedge is pronounced hay. Hey, Heather. And we've annoyed this Swede. Now, the last Swede that we had on the show wanted to compost and use bokashi bins to ferment their kitchen waste. All was well and good, but this one says, the thing is, last year I tried to place an order from you. I moved from UK to Sweden, and what did you lot tell me? That Sweden wasn't in the EU and you wouldn't talk to us.
Really? Oh, dear.
Oops.
Yeah.
So, really sorry there, Stephen. We've made friends now, and he's forgiven us, and he's ordered his bokashi bucket. There we are. Anyway, he's, yes, it says because we accused him of using a different voltage, so we wouldn't handle his order. So, I'm really sorry about that, Stephen, but nice that you've ordered. And what I will say is we've now got listeners all over the world. I looked at our stats, and we've got listeners in China, Japan, we've got listeners in Sweden, Italy, France, Germany, all over the place. But we need you to review us on iTunes. If you possibly could, please go to your iTunes and review us, and obviously subscribe by clicking iTunes. Anyway, enough of all that feedback. Let's just chuck it away, because Robin Page is here. And we want to know about the Countryside Restoration.
Yeah, we do really. I mean, that's one of the things I realised who you were and what you were about. Some time ago now, I spoke to one of your colleagues. I came over to Lark Rise in Cambridgeshire. I thought it was an absolutely stunning farm. Subsequently, I've been reading your articles in the Telegraph and hearing a lot about you. I'm not entirely sure how you spread yourself so thinly, which is another great reason that you've come today. But can you tell a listener a little bit more about what you do and what the Countryside Restoration Trust is all about?
Very simply, my qualifications for talking about this are that I live next door to the house where I was born,
Right.
on the farm where my father farmed for 50 years, in the village where I went to the village school,
Right.
and I'm still on that farm, and it's a farm that I'm going to fall off my perch. Despite the efforts to cover the whole area with concrete, we have resisted so far, and we've resisted the people who say, "Did you know your farmyard is in the village envelope?" And I say, I'm on the planning committee, so I did know that, and I don't want 6 million, thank you very much, clear off.
Yeah.
And so we intend to keep farming. But because I was born and bred on the farm, don't need a degree to tell me that intensive farming has really, really screwed up wildlife. And so a lot of the things that I was appreciating at the age of 5, like looking across the brook and seeing a barn owl quartering the meadows in the evening, picking cowslips, seeing bee orchids, hearing stories about the otters, all that. All those things vanished. Our farm stayed the same. We were a little island, and all round us prairie farming took place. Philip the prairie farmer is not limited to Herefordshire. It's all over Britain. These hooligans, they really let loose on their toy tractors, and it was mayhem. And so I had
Control yourself.
I'm saying nothing. Yeah.
And so a couple of good friends I developed. My father wouldn't let me go on the farm because I was second son. So I began writing, and I got very friendly with Gordon Benningfield, the artist from Hertfordshire, and Lawrence van der Post, and they'd got the same problems with what was going on in Britain as me. And in a nutshell, we decided to form the Countryside Restoration Trust to try and buy over-intensively farmed land and farm it in a more sustainable and wildlife-friendly way, bring the wildlife back.
Right.
On that farm, which is now 400 acres, we've bought fresh land as the trust, which had nothing on it but wheat, and wheat. We've now got barn owls. Barn owls are back after 50 years. We've got otters back. We've got the highest density of skylarks in East Anglia. Yeah. We've got corn buntings, reed buntings, grey partridges. The other day I saw 40 grey partridges on 400 acres. And so it goes on. We've got tremendous wildlife back. And so what we want to do now is get a farm of different type of farming all over Britain. Right. And as you know, we've now got 2 farms in Herefordshire. We've got one at Turnerstone, not far from here, and we've got one at Markle, which has got brilliant pedigree Herefords on it, and we want to try and bring the wildlife back to them too, because wildlife is disappearing here as well. 2 species that I'm particularly worried about are the curlew and the lapwing or peewit, and Herefordshire used to be full of both. Yeah. Lapwings, breeding lapwings are now very scarce as I understand it. A few curlew about, but they're declining. And then you've got other birds like redstarts, pied flycatchers, and birds like that which actually need our help. And so we do need to farm to make a profit, farm well, but we need to get the wildlife back, the traditional wildlife back.
Right.
And then we've just been given a dairy farm in Surrey. We didn't know whether to take it or whether not to take it because the government is in the pockets of the supermarkets and they're stitching dairy farmers up. We decided to go ahead, take the farm, see if we can make it pay, because dairy farming as it is carried out now is a crime. Dairy farmers are having to intensify, they're having to get silage off all the year, all the ground nesting birds are chewed up. Dairy farms are becoming wildlife deserts. And the other thing is that I never wanted to run a charity, but we've taken on the issues that the big conservation bodies like the RSPB avoid.
Right.
They're the ones who should be saying what's happening to the dairy farms is wicked because it's affecting birds. They don't seem to want to upset
I read an
these.
article that you'd written recently. The Heather bought a cracking little magazine called The Countryman from a local garage. And you mentioned in there about your thoughts about the RSPB and the fact that they were using a farm, contracted out farm, and the kind of soul of the farm was.
They got a farm in Cambridgeshire without a farmer, a farm in Cambridgeshire without a farmhouse, or it's got a farmhouse but it's empty.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about farming RSPB, then for goodness sake, include the farmer in the equation, and the farmer and a family. Yeah. Because that's what it's all about. We want a living and a working countryside. Yeah. We want a birdsong countryside, but we want people living and working in it too. We want a combination of it all.
That's the bare bones of the thing. That's what it boils down to, really. It's a balance between production and wildlife.
Yeah. I will tell you, we are challenging the RSPB to 2 debates this year. We challenge them to debate with the Countryside Restoration Trust at the Bird Fair, I think that's in July or August, and the Game Fair, July or August, and we want it to be called Killing the Countryside Through Kindness. I hope to be taking part, together with Dick Potts, who used to run the Game Conservancy, and a farmer called Philip Merrick, who's got a fantastic number of breeding lapwings on his farm. And we want to talk about the damaging effect of predators, from badgers to sparrowhawks to magpies, actually wiping out some well-loved, well-known species. And what do? They blame it all on the farmers. Well, sorry, it's not all the farmers.
No,
it's the magpies, it's the crows.
Well, it's a lack of it
because,
looking at everything.
Let's give Farmer Phil a chance to reply to this idea that he's a prairie farmer from Robin, because, of course, it seems to me that it's a great way of answering the debate.
Well, of course, there's farming and farming, and I mean, Robin knows as well as anyone that at the one end of the scale, you've perhaps got what masquerades as a rotation, 2 wheats and oilseed rape, and back to wheat. And then at the other end of the scale, which is probably more predominant in Herefordshire, you've got more mixed farming, which has got livestock in the system and so on. And mixed farming means mixed habitat, which means more wildlife. Now, you can get into an endless argument about the nitty-gritty of how you actually farm it, but at the end of the day, if you've got mixed habitats joined together by wildlife corridors, hedges, whatever, and a patchwork, which we're fortunate in Hereford to have, then you have a better chance of having that mix of wildlife, which I believe is part of the balance that is, or should be, food production. But if you go east into counties like Northamptonshire, Cambridgeshire, and over towards Norfolk, where the fields have been made huge by our standards, 100-acre fields are not uncommon, there is no room for wildlife unless it happens to like wide open spaces. You add into that the problems of predation through legislation that stops the control of things like badgers, buzzards and so on. It's going to alter the balance.
Yeah, but what about your farm?
Our farm, when we came here, for years, and for some years then, we had curlews, we had lapwings. As a child, not very far from here, we had loads of lapwings. But since 1996, I think, badger numbers have doubled. And badgers like nests. And the ground nesting birds, the curlews, the lapwings, they weren't fussed about our farming because we've got grass fields, we've got cereal fields, we've got winter cropping, which obviously to a ground nesting spring bird is fine. But when Mr. Brock comes along and eats your eggs, you're knackered. And similarly, when you've got your little clutch of curlew chicks running along the tram lines in the cereal crop, and Mr. Buzzard comes and has one every day until there are none left, or the crow has them, there is a problem with the balance, I think.
Can I just ask you a question, this? Because, you've been a little bit rude about East Anglian farmers, and that's fine. I haven't got a problem with that. But, let's talk about... You're very kind to Herefordshire farmers and about their rotation.
There are issues.
And I thought the Herefordshire rotation was based on the 2 Ps, the potato and the polytunnel.
There's 3 Ps.
What's that?
Poultry, potato and polytunnel.
Oh, really?
Causing the problem, apparently.
Yeah, so come on,
I think that's a fair comment.
If we hadn't bought Turnstone, all those lovely meadows would have been potatoes.
I think that is true. And the potato argument, we rent out a small percentage of ground on some rented land for potatoes, but we don't grow potatoes ourselves, and our base unit we don't have potatoes on. There is an issue. Herefordshire happens to produce particularly good potatoes, and as you all know, that if you can plant potatoes into ground that hasn't had potatoes before, or certainly not for a long time, then you get away from a lot of the potato diseases, hence the driver to plough up virgin ground. That is a problem, and I don't really have a solution to it because it's a market-driven problem. You've managed to buck the trend in the case of Turnstone.
I've got a little quiz question for you. Last May, I went on holiday to the Isles of Scilly, which I love. 28 miles from Cornwall. And we went when the Cornish potato harvest was in full swing. Great. So where did the potatoes come from? In the co-op on St Mary's in the Isle of Scilly, when they could have come 28 miles. The new potatoes, you'll be very pleased to know, came from Egypt, because obviously Egypt is easier for the co-op to move potatoes from than Cornwall. And the other main potatoes, they came from Perth in Scotland. And do you think they had varieties of potatoes to offer?
Doubtful.
No, they weren't offering varieties of potato. They were offering baking potatoes, mashing potatoes and everyday potatoes. How balmy is that?
Yeah.
But of course, the point is that those of us who know, and it's our job to make sure that the consumers get to know which varieties we want. And if you ask where your potatoes come from and the consumer makes the decision, do you feel that in the context of the Countryside Restoration Trust, which after all is our chance to find out about, that you're wanting to change the general public's attitude to farmland?
Oh, yes.
And rather than the CRT telling the supermarkets their fortune, are you of the opinion, as I am, that educating the consumer in the hope that you can get the requirements back at the chain that way is the way to do it?
Oh, definitely. We have our supporters, and we get reports from people all the time about how they're going into supermarkets saying, we want local apples, we want local potatoes, we want... But I think it just bounces off them. The key thing is profit. And, you know, I was just really, really depressed on my recent trip to Kenya because I went past Polytunnel City that made Herefordshire look quite undeveloped. And what are they doing? They're growing beans and flowers and things for our supermarkets. Last summer, in the middle of our vegetable season, Tesco had got carrots from South Africa, beans from Kenya, and they had got various green vegetables from Zimbabwe, a country where 60% of the population can't get enough food. And I just despair at that. And so we are going to try and get at the supermarkets because there are two schools of thought. Some say work with them, others say slag them off. Obviously, people like Prince Charles are doing a lot of good things with Duchy, but he's Prince Charles, and quite rightly, he's got influence. I don't think the supermarkets will give me 2 minutes, let alone 5 minutes.
There is movement there. I mean, you mentioned Waitrose, and they're coming along, and one feels that if they start, the others will follow. I won't say it'll happen immediately. And Prince Charles has done a lot of work with Waitrose. Yeah,
well, I hope you're right, because the thing that really wound me up over Christmas was the Marks and Spencer's food advert.
It isn't just.
It's
milk chocolate.
It wasn't. It was
very good.
It was spears of fresh asparagus, all the way from Peru. So how the hell could it be fresh?
Darlings, you've gone on too long, right? So one thing I'm quite sure that there will not be on sale this week in Marks and Sparks are squirrels.
No.
So
you can bet your bottom dollar.
So we really want Robin to try our squirrel burgers out.
Yeah.
But we'll have to come back next week to do that. So for this week, thank you, Robin, and I will go off and cook the squirrel burgers, and it will take me a week to do that. You know what I mean, old chum.
Is that a slow cooker you've got?
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye from me.